My name is Sarah Callum, and I have been married for 11 months. I want to tell you this story from the beginning because the beginning is the part that explains everything that came after, and because I think if I only tell you the end, you will think I am someone I am not. I am not a dramatic person. I do not enjoy conflict. I was raised by a woman who believed that the quietest person in the room is usually the one paying the most attention, and I have tried to live by that in every room I have ever been in. I tell you this so that when I tell you what I did, you understand that it was not impulsive, it was not reactive. It was the most deliberate thing I have ever done in my life, and I have thought about every part of it since, and I would do it again exactly the same way. I met Daniel at work. We were in the same department for 2 years before either of us said anything beyond professional courtesy. He was careful and measured, and he thought before he spoke, and I found that rare enough that I paid attention to it. We were together for 3 years before we got married. I knew his mother, Vivian, for all 3 of those years. I want to be fair to her in this telling, because I think fairness matters even when the other person has not been fair to you. Vivian is not a cruel woman in the way that word is usually meant. She is not deliberately unkind in the obvious way. She is the kind of person who believes that she is always acting in someone's best interest, and that belief gives her permission to do things that serve her own interests while telling herself it is love. She never liked me. I knew it from the first dinner, not because she was rude, she was perfectly warm on the surface, but because I was paying attention. There was a specific quality to the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't looking, a particular pause before she agreed with anything I said, a pattern of small corrections, small redirections, small moments where she would turn a conversation about me into a conversation about what Daniel needed. I cataloged these things quietly. I did not mention them to Daniel because they were all small enough to be deniable, and I did not want to be the woman who arrived in his life making him choose. I was willing to wait. I was willing to let the record build at its own pace. I did not know then how quickly it would build. We got married on a Saturday in October. It was a small wedding, 36 people, exactly what both of us wanted. Vivian wanted a larger one. She had mentioned this 4 times over 18 months, each time presenting it as a practical suggestion about seating or catering or the feelings of extended family members who had not been invited. Each time Daniel said, "Mum, it's going to be small," and each time she said, "Of course, whatever you both decide." I watched her face each time she said it. I filed what I saw. We had been married for 7 months when I found out I was pregnant. I want to tell you what that felt like because the feeling matters to the story. It was a Tuesday morning, and I had been quietly tracking something for 3 weeks, a set of small signals my body was sending that I was not yet ready to interpret out loud. When the test confirmed what I had already suspected, I sat on the bathroom floor for 11 minutes. Not because I was unhappy, because I was completely still with something too large to move through quickly. Daniel and I had talked about children. We wanted them. We had not been trying in any formal sense, but we had not been preventing it either. And now here was this fact, solid and confirmed, on a Tuesday before 7. I sat with it. I let it settle into the shape of what it was. Then I stood up and I went to work, and I said nothing to anyone because I'm 8 weeks away from telling anyone, and because I wanted to carry this privately for a little while longer, just mine and Daniel's, before it belonged to the world. I told Daniel that evening. He sat very still for a moment, and then he pulled me toward him and held on, and neither of us said anything for a while. When we finally talked, the first thing he said was, "We are not telling anyone until you're ready." I said, 12 weeks, minimum. He said, "Whatever you need." I loved him for that. I want to be clear about that love, because it's the part that made everything that came next bearable. Daniel is a good man. He was not the problem. What happened did not happen because of who he is. It happened in spite of. 3 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, Vivian called a family gathering. I was not told about it in advance. I found out it was happening because Daniel mentioned it the morning of, casually, as something he had apparently been informed about earlier in the week and had forgotten to pass on. He said it was a regular family lunch, nothing specific. I said, "Is it strange that she didn't invite me directly?" He said, "She probably assumed I would tell you." He was not being evasive. He genuinely believed this. I looked at him for a moment and decided not to press it. I had a commitment that afternoon I couldn't move. I said, "Go, enjoy it. I will see everyone at the next one." He came home quieter than usual. I noticed it immediately, but I waited. We had dinner. We talked about other things. After dinner, he was in the particular internal state that meant he was trying to find words for something. I gave him space. About 40 minutes, he said, "Sarah, my mom said something at lunch today that I need to tell you about." I put down what I was holding. I gave him my full attention. He said, "She told the family that you and I have been having trouble conceiving, that there may be a fertility issue on your side." He said the words very carefully, as if he was aware that each one was a kind of damage. I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Where did she get that from?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Daniel, has there been a single conversation between you and her about our fertility?" He said, "No, never, not once." I said, "Then she invented it." He did not say anything. I said, "Daniel, I'm not upset with you, but I need you to understand exactly what happened. I want to tell you what I did not do. I did not call Vivian that night. I did not ask Daniel to call her. I did not send a message to any of his family members correcting the record. I did not post anything. I did not confront anyone. I went to bed that night with my hand on my stomach, and I thought very clearly about timing. There's a specific kind of patience that is not passivity. It is not weakness, and it is not avoidance. It is the knowledge that the right moment has not arrived yet, and that arriving at it too early will cost you the impact you need. I had something. I had information that made every word Vivian had said not just wrong, but precisely, documentably, publicly wrong. The question was not whether the correction would come. The question was when and in what room, with how many witnesses. In the days that followed, I watched what happened in Daniel's family. His aunt sent him a message expressing sympathy. 2 cousins reached out. One of them, a woman named Priya, who had always been warm to me, texted me directly. Her message was careful and kind. She said she was sorry to hear things had been difficult and that she was there if I ever needed to talk. I read it twice. I thanked her warmly and said nothing else. I wanted to. I understood that Priya was acting out of genuine care and that she deserved the truth. But the truth was 4 weeks away from being ready to be told properly, and I knew that if I told it quietly and privately, it would stay quiet and private was not what this situation deserved. Vivian had not been quiet or private. She had gathered an audience. The correction needed an audience too. Daniel spoke to his mother 5 days after the lunch. I was not there for the call. He told me afterward that he had asked her directly where the information came from, and she had said she had concerns based on things she had observed and conversations she had heard. He said he told her that there was no basis for what she said, that she had caused significant damage, and that she owed me an apology. He said she became emotional and said she was only trying to protect him, that she worried about his future, that she hoped he understood she came from a place of love. He said he told her that love that looked like this was not something he was able to accept. I held him after that conversation. I did not tell him about the pregnancy. I was not ready. 4 more weeks. I had my 8-week appointment the following Thursday. Everything was as it should be. The doctor printed the scan image, and I put it in the inside pocket of my bag, and I carried it with me every day for the next 4 weeks, like a document I was waiting to file, because that is what it was. I want to tell you about the Sunday it happened, because I want to be accurate. Vivian had organized a birthday lunch for Daniel's father, Robert, who was turning 64. It was a family occasion. It was the first family occasion since the lunch I had not been invited to. There were 14 people there. I had counted in advance. I arrived with Daniel, and I was warm, and I was present, and I participated in every conversation I was included in. I watched Vivian from across the table with the specific attention of someone who has been waiting for the right moment for 6 weeks. After the main course, when the table was still gathered and the conversation had reached a natural pause, Robert said something I had not planned for. He said, "We are all family here, and family is what matters most." He said it simply, as a toast of sorts, and people agreed and raised their glasses. And I looked at Daniel, and he looked at me, and something passed between us that was not quite a question and not quite permission, but was close enough to both that I made my decision. I put my hand on the table. I said, "Robert, that is exactly right, and I want to share something with the family that I have been waiting to share." And I took the ultrasound image from my bag and I put it on the table. The room changed. That is the only way I can describe it. It did not change loudly. There was no gasp, no dramatic reaction. It changed the way a room changes when the temperature shifts. Something in the quality of the air, something in the stillness. I said, "I am 12 weeks pregnant. Daniel and I have known since week 8, and we have been waiting for the right time to tell everyone together." Robert said something kind and genuine and reached across the table to shake Daniel's hand. Priya made a sound that was mostly joy, and I looked at Vivian. She was looking at the ultrasound image. Her face was doing something I had not seen it do before, a specific collapse of the particular confidence she normally carried, the expression of someone whose architecture has just lost a foundational piece and has not yet adjusted to the new shape of things. She looked up. Our eyes met. I did not say anything. I did not need to. The ultrasound was on the table. 12 weeks. 8 weeks at the moment she had told this room a version of the truth she had invented. Every person at that table was doing the arithmetic in their own way, at their own pace, and I watched it happen in real time. What followed the lunch was a set of conversations I want to describe accurately. Priya found me by the tea and coffee table afterward. She said, "Sarah, I texted you." I said, "I know." She said, "I did not know." I said, "I know you did not." She said, "How long has she—" and she stopped herself. I said, "It does not matter now. It's on the table." She looked at me for a long moment, and she said, "You have more patience than I will ever have." I said, "I had a reason to wait." Daniel's aunt approached me before we left. She was a woman who had sent the sympathy message. She said, "Congratulations," and the word had a texture to it that told me she understood what had happened and that she was not comfortable with her own role in it. I said, "Thank you." I said nothing else. There are moments when saying less is the most powerful thing you can do, and I had learned over the past 6 weeks to identify those moments precisely and to stop speaking at exactly the right point. Vivian did not speak to me before we left. She spoke to Daniel briefly in the hallway, and I was not present for that conversation. He told me about it in the car on the way home. He said she had told him she was sorry and that she had not understood the full picture. He said he had told her that the full picture was not hers to understand or manage or act on ever, and that what she had done had caused damage she would need to account for over time, through actions and not through words. He said she cried. I said, "I know." He said, "Does that change anything for you?" I thought about it honestly. I said, "I feel sad for her. In the specific way I feel sad for people who damage things they cannot repair while believing they are protecting them." He was quiet for a moment. He said, "That is an exact description." I said, "I know her. I've been watching her for 4 years." She called me the following week. I let her speak. She apologized at length with genuine emotion, and I believe the emotion was real. I said, "Vivian, I accept that you are sorry." I said, "What I need you to understand is that this child will have a grandmother who has demonstrated she is capable of this, and that what I do with that information going forward is something I will decide based on what I observe, not what I am told." She said, "I understand." I said, "I hope so." We ended the call cordially. I do not know yet what kind of relationship she and I will have. That story is still being written. What is not still being written is the chapter that is already complete. She called a room together. She told a story.
She did not know that the truth was already growing, already dated, already on its way to the table in a coat pocket, waiting for the right Sunday. That's my story. If it stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your city in the comments, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.